Okay, this footage is actually from last week. It's just a simple string change, but there's a good reason for it. And it's because of this guitar. So this guitar is a 1982 vintage reissue of a 1962 Stratocaster. Not to be confused with the recent Custom Shop reissues or the 1990s American Fender reissues. So back in the 80s, they were produced, I believe, in Japan and in America. I'm not sure whether this is the Japanese or the American, but it doesn't really matter because it plays great, aside from the couple of upgrades and changes that I need to make to it. Now, the reason I wanted to show you the video footage is because of these tuning pegs. So I'm going to zoom in and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so you can see the design of the tuning peg is there's a hole bored through the center of a peg, and then the top is just a simple a slot, right? So when I first got the guitar, I had been used to seeing, the typical tuning peg where it has a hole bored through the side of it, and you can, you can secure your string by winding around your initial insert to tighten it. Well, this isn't so straightforward. And what's the purpose of the slot? Anyway, so what happened is for many years, I was putting extra effort into trying to secure the string in a way that wasn't necessary at all. Okay, so the footage I'm going to show you will just go through the very straightforward process of stringing these, and they're surprisingly strong considering the rather unusual design. Right, so the machine heads themselves are called Kluson style, so I'm assuming Kluson was the original manufacturer. So of course we've got our snips, an absolute requirement, and our little Jim Dunlop string winder. And I'm going to string it up with some super slinky number 9s. Of course, we feed the string through the tremolo block. Okay, now here I actually end up cutting a little bit more string than I normally do. Normally I measure just the distance of 3 pegs, so the 2 spaces. And you'll see that when I wind this up, there's a little bit too much string on there. Anyway, so this is the process. It's just a matter of putting it straight into the hole and then hooking around the side of that slot. Once you've got that in place, you need to maintain tension on the string so it doesn't slide out. Then you're good to go. It'll hold, as we'll see. But I actually end up doing something wrong in this. So I'm going to have to point that out as well. And again, as you see, I don't need to worry about having the wind go over top of the first insert. It's just a matter of making sure you're right down to the center of that bore, hooking along the edge of the slot, and then wind it up. And it'll last. Okay, so this is the distance that I would normally do, and it's perfect for these. And actually you can see the winding on the low E string. There's just, maybe 1.5 too much of a winding on it. But again, you always need to make sure you do have enough string actually on there. And again, just that right there, that little hook on the edge, that's enough to hold. So, I think I had originally tried different techniques of wrapping around one side of the slot. Those will actually make the string, make the tension fail, or the string will come off. Okay, now, of course, what does happen is that crucial point of getting the string to hook on the edge of that slot, it's a little more difficult as you get into the thinner gauge strings. And again, that's the perfect distance for these Kluson style tuners. As I'm sure you already know, you need to make sure that you're putting your tuning keys into the upright position so you don't constantly slam against it with your string winder. I can't hear the audio on this right now, but I know at some point you'll hear dogs barking. They're not barking at you, don't worry. At another point, I know that you'll also hear a dove cooing outside the window. Yeah, so again, this is the point where with the thinner gauge strings, you need to get that little crook on the string right the first time. Otherwise, you're pretty much throwing the string in the garbage. But what is key, and you'll, as I said, I make a mistake in a couple minutes here. What's key is to maintain the tension until you have all of the windings in place. And if that tension loosens up, or if you don't have it perfectly taut around that crook on the edge of that slot, it will slide. Now, having said that, I've probably only had to throw out, I don't know, maybe 2 strings in the past 10 years. Or 3, because I end up doing that with the high E during this restring. Sadly, I had actually just rebuffed the guitar, but I've covered it with my greasy fingerprints again. Okay, and you can see it right there. In fact, what I'll do when I'm editing this, I'll go back and I'll slow that down so you can see it. Or we may see it as this loops around again, as the string winds. You'll see that there's a gap between the string and the tuning peg right there where it sticks out. And that little 1 millimeter of space right there, that's enough that if you wind up your string, it won't tune up properly and the string will come off. The problem is that because there's already a bend put into that string, if I were to try, or if you were to try as well, to reinsert the string and put a fresh bend on it, it won't take because that extra bend will keep space away from the tuning peg, and again, it'll just pop right off. Yeah, so shortly after that, I forget where I did the original editing on that, but I had to put that string back on. I had to put a new one on. And of course, remember, anytime you're doing a string change, you want to make sure you know where all of those little clippings are. because those are sharp as heck. Likewise, you'll have noticed earlier when I'm clipping the strings, make sure that you have the end in your hand so that you know where the string will rebound when you cut it. Because if those things fly off out of control and they hit your finger, they will go right into your finger and it hurts. Of course, they can also fly off into your eye. They can also fly off into a location where you can't find them for several months, and then you find your cat trying to chew on it. So yeah, typically I'll just always throw them into an envelope and then make sure they're together and throw them in the garbage. Though there may be recycling opportunities there, I'm not sure yet. But again, that's it. It's a very straightforward process. The strings will hold on these pegs just like they will on any other pegs. And now it's just a matter of tuning it up. And I'm not too concerned with how aggressively I'm plucking on the string because I want to wear them in quickly so that I can play. Because if there's one thing I don't like about changing strings is having to wait. Having to wait like 2 days until they can settle into place. So what I'll normally do is once I've got them strung up there, and once I've got them tuned up the first time, I'll go through every string and give it a good stretch. What's we got here? So what I'll do, you'll see how I'm running my hand up. The idea is to ensure that I'm stretching the various areas of the string, right? So I'm not just stretching it, say, at the nut and the bridge point. That way it should theoretically stretch based on the location of my finger all the way up the fretboard when I slide up like that. Having said that, I'm no mechanical engineer. I'm no physicist. So, maybe I got it all wrong. Yeah, and then I'll go for another full stretch all the way up these strings. And even after I let this sit, overnight, I'll pick it up the next day and do the same thing, stretching the strings all the way up to make sure I can get it into place, to make sure I can get the string settled into place as soon as possible. Yeah, and you may be able to hear, and actually you might hear in some of the videos as well, I'm having some problems with getting a nice resonance out of the strings because I haven't filed the nut properly yet. So the slots aren't really in place to ensure that the front edge of the nut is gripping the string to allow for a nice resonance. Okay, and that's that. Like I said, it's a very straightforward process. I mean, stringing guitar, there's no big deal about it. But as I said, for many years, I've had this since I was 16 or maybe 15, I forget, 16, I think. And for many years, I would try all of these different techniques thinking that I needed to find a way to secure it because, well, if it's an older system, maybe it's not as effective or not as efficient. When it turns out that it is as easy as can be, it's just pop the string in, get the bend in there, maintain the tension, and you're good to go. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Check out the sunlight coming in through those blinds. It's a nice day out there.